Aloha! Lisa here with Upside Down Pilates and Nourishment. I am the creator of the Joint Pain Eliminator program, and this is where I help women eliminate joint pain so that they can get back to living an active life that they love. This week, we are going to talk about what the gut-vaginal microbiome crosstalk is, and we are also going to look at what are the 5 different types of groups or community state types of the vaginal microbiome. So I'm really excited about this topic, and I'm really excited to share this with you. This is part of phase 1 in my Vaginal Health Reset program. So if you're interested in this type of information, along with Pilates exercise videos and also cooking videos on how to cook for health, microbiome health, so don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Check me out on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, or all of them for different ways to connect with me. Let's get started. What is the gut-vaginal microbiome crosstalk? All right, so last week we talked about what is in the vaginal microbiome. Remember, we predominantly want lactobacillus to be populating the vaginal microbiome. And now we're going to talk about how the gut microbiome and the vaginal microbiome are linked. They are linked through the close proximity of the vagina to the anus. All right, so then we can assume there's going to be translocation of different species after being shed in our stool. All right. Oral probiotics that promote a healthy gut microbiome will then affect the health of our vaginal microbiome. So gut commensal microbiota, such as Faecalocali bacterium and another one called Rhambuceta, are showing a decreased risk for Enterobacteria bacterium and urinary tract infections. Okay. There's been a lot of research and attention to the potential benefits of targeted probiotic supplementation for reducing the risk of UTIs. This is really interesting. So in vitro research, they've highlighted the ability of an oral probiotic consisting of a whole bunch of different lactobacillus species to inhibit the growth of various what's called uropathogens, including E. coli, Candida albicans, which we've talked about before, Staph aureus, which we've talked about before, and P. aeruginosa, which I'm not familiar with. This likely occurs with a wide range of mechanisms, including the production of antibacterial agents that we talked about last week, like lactic acid, hydrogen peroxide, bactericidins, competition with the uropathogens for attachment sites, and nutrients, and strengthening the epithelial barrier to improve resilience to infection. So we talked about those different things last week, how having more lactobacillus will produce the bactericidins and other things to kill bad bugs, but then they start to compete with the bugs and then crowd the bad bugs out, is basically what that's saying. So that's really interesting, and they're able to do that with a probiotic in the gut, so taking a probiotic. Let's see, due to the close proximity of the urethra to the vagina, the vaginal microbiome can also play a role in the development of UTIs. So many people deal with these UTIs, and it's showing that, the vaginal microbiome can contribute to that, and then it's going to be vice versa, that the UTIs in the urinary tract that could play a role in the vaginal microbiome. Right, moving on. So what are some examples of bacterial links to the vaginal microbiome to the gut microbiome? Okay, here we go. So women with bacterial vaginosis, associated bacteria in stool reported higher incidence of bacterial vaginosis. Okay, so these are some of the bacterial vaginosis bugs: Gardnerella vaginalis, Provotella bivae, Atopobium vaginae, and Mycoplasma hominis. Women with higher concentrations of L. craspatus in stool were more likely, or lactobacillus, it's kind of lactobacillus, in stool were more likely to have a healthy vaginal microbiome composition. So that's really interesting. The pathogenesis of UTIs typically starts with contamination of the periurethral space by uropathogens residing in the gut, followed by colonization of their urethra and ascending migration to the bladder. So what all these things are saying is bugs in the gut are affecting bugs in the vagina and affecting bugs now in our urinary tract, even into our bladder. So those bad bugs are traveling all over the place and causing problems. UTIs are predominantly caused by uropathogenic Escherichia coli, which is responsible for over 80% of the community-acquired infections. Healthcare-related infections are associated with things like, so things that you get from the hospital or that type of thing. It's going to be staph, Staphylococcus, Klebsiella, Enterobacter, Proteois, and Enterococcus. So very interesting. Then the uropathogenic Escherichia coli strains are found in abundance in the gut of the patients with UTI and are thus considered to originate from the gut. So this study is showing that people who have the bug that causes the UTIs, they have that bug in their gut. And so what this study is thinking is that the bugs in the gut are translocating, like we talked about earlier, to the urethra and then getting into the bladder and causing these urinary tract infections. All right. Gut probiotics containing lactic acid producing bacteria like bacillus spores can help maintain the vaginal pH and obstruct the growth of pathogenic bacteria. By inhibiting the growth of unfriendly bacteria like the E. coli, gut probiotics like the bacillus spores promote vaginal microbiome health. Gut Bacillus subtilis, that's a type of good bacteria, lowers inflammatory cytokines and promotes a favorable vaginal environment. And gut Lactobacillus probiotics improve the health of the vaginal microbiome by translocating then and helping to repopulate the vaginal microbiome and making sure that the bad bugs in the gut are under control so that they don't go into our vaginal microbiome. Very interesting. Okay, so that is talking, so what we just talked about now are all the different bad bugs versus good bugs that could be in our gut, that will go into our vagina, that will go into our urethra, and that's causing a lot of the problems that they're finding actually in the scientific literature. Now, what are the 5 groups or states of the vaginal microbiome? So, scientists have gone through and then categorized different types of vaginal microbiomes into 5 different types. Okay, so these are the 5 types. It's called state 1 or type 1 is L. crispatus, which is Lactobacillus crispatus dominant. Type 2 is Lactobacillus graceri dominant. Type 3 is Lactobacillus iners dominant. Type 4 is non-Lactobacillus dominant. So remember, we talked about we should be dominated by Lactobacillus, and the type 4 type is not dominated by the Lactobacillus. And then type 5 is Lactobacillus jenseni dominant. All right. So let's go through and now talk about each one of these types. Type 1, that's Lactobacillus crispatus dominant. It's one of the healthiest community state types. It has a lower pH of less than pH of 4. It maintains stability through a woman's menstrual cycle, and it can occasionally transition towards the Lactobacillus inners dominant microbiome due to sexual activity, menses, your period, or pregnancy. The Lactobacillus crispatus is a common species of the lactobacillus that produces hydrogen peroxide. So the type 1, it is basically saying here the best one to have, and it maintains its stability through having your period, which not all of them do, but it looks like this one produces hydrogen peroxide to keep the bad bugs out. Let's move to type 2. Type 2 is Lactobacillus gracieri dominant. So this is not a common state type, and it's associated with a vaginal pH of 4.4. Women with type 2 can transition to type 1 during pregnancy, but that is not very common. And this type, though, is rarely associated with disease states. So that's good. We do not want disease. So the Lactobacillus gracieri is another species of lactobacillus that inhabits the vaginal microbiome of healthy women and produces lactocillin, a natural antibiotic to keep the bad bugs out. So this is another good type to have. Let's move on to type number 3 here. Type number 3 is the Lactobacillus inners dominant. So it has a pH of less than 4.5. It's associated with both good vaginal health and dysbiosis, depending on which bacteria are present alongside the Lactobacillus inners. So not as good, but better than type 4 that we're going to come to in a minute. Type 3 can it produces lactobacillus lactic acid, which is less effective in inhibiting unwanted microbial species as the D-lactic acid. And then type 3 can transition to microbial community dominated by bacterial vaginosis associated bacteria. So not as strong. And it's associated with a high baseline concentrations of pro-inflammatory molecules that can damage the vaginal mucosa, and that's going to create a leaky vagina, right? So we want everything to be, you want all of your mucosal layers and all of that to be nice and strong, just like in your gut, and so that's going to damage that, which is going to create more problems down the line, obviously. And it is associated with both good vaginal health, but then also dysbiosis. It's not as strong as the type 1 or the type 2. Let's see here. Lactobacillus inners provides protection from pathogens, but it's less protection than other lactobacillus species. It can play a protective role or neutral role when it comes to adverse health outcomes such as infertility, pelvic inflammatory disease, neonatal issues, and toxic shock syndrome. When assessing the health of this type, it's important to consider which bacteria are present alongside the lactobacillus inners, disruptive versus protective, and whether or not one is experiencing symptoms. If it is found in the microbiome alongside a diverse collection of disruptive bacteria, it can cause symptoms like itching and unusual discharge. Alternatively, if the lactobacillus inners is found in combination with other protective lactobacillus, it seems to act neutral or even protective. So this is where we get to remember we are always talking about going out and killing the bad bugs. It's not always just about the bad bugs. It's about what good bugs are there and what the good bugs are doing and how they're working together as a community And this goes for not just our vaginal microbiome, but our gut microbiome and our whole body. So we have to stop this mentality of kill the bad bugs. You gotta look at, and this is the perfect example of it, where this particular dominant vaginal type can be healthy or not healthy, but it depends on what the other types of bugs that are there with this particular dominant bacteria. Great example of that. All right, now we're going to go into type 4. This is the one that has problems because it's non-lactobacillus dominant and it has a high microbial diversity. So this type 4 is at high risk for bacterial vaginosis. It's the least stable and fluctuates the most in composition throughout a woman's menstrual cycle. So this is going to be people who have like a lot of PMS and stuff like that, because these bugs are going to fluctuate, and then you know how that is. One minute you're fine, the next minute you're feeling crazy and got cramps and crying and who knows. So, yep. Type 4, we can now check it out on a test and see where we are. This one is highly associated with bacterial vaginosis, preterm birth, endometriosis, pelvic inflammatory disease, miscarriage. Let's see, what else it's going to be. Any of the bad stuff. Stillbirths, PCOS, any of these types of problems that we have, it's going to be associated with this number 4 type. It's a high prevalence of non-lactic acid producing species, and it tends to have low organic acid production. The pH is higher, and there is a lot of vaginal mucosal disruption. Interestingly, it's common among healthy women of African descent. This type, the community type 4, lacks a high proportion of lactobacilli and is defined as the diversity state dominated by anaerobic and microaerophilic bacteria. This heterogeneous community state type can be divided into 2 subtypes. So there's subtype 4A, which is characterized by modest proportion of lactobacillus along with low proportion of anaerobic Anaerococcus, Chironobacteria. There's several things here. The Finigoldia or Streptococcus. So that's the A group. And then the B group of the type 4 has a higher proportion of Atopobium, in addition to Provitella, Periovinomus, Senitha, Gardnerella, Mobilia Coup, something like that. There's a number of these other ones here. But notably, several bacteria present in the community state type 4B are associated with bacterial vaginosis. So that's the basic point here is there's 2 subtypes, and you can test and see which subtype you are, and then see if what we can identify is that these different subtypes are associated with different problems. And this is so important for any of us who have these problems. And I'm so grateful that this information is now out here, even though I can't pronounce any of the different types of bacteria that there are. That's not the point. The point is that we know that it's there and we can test and see where we are. Now, the last subtype is type 5. And this is the Lactobacillus jenseni dominant. It is uncommon. It has a pH of 4.2, was a little bit lower than the 4.5 that we just saw. It's considered healthy, though not a lot about it is known. So there is this other type. Obviously, they need to do more studies on this and all of it, because there's so much that we can identify. And this isn't mentioning any of actually the yeast that's found, how it affects it. It's not mentioning if there's worms or other parasites, and all of those things are going to create or contribute to the community of the vaginal microbiome. So this, what we just discussed, is the information that, it's the latest information that's coming out about the bacterial composition. Now, what's so great is we can test for it now. There's the Vaginal Microbiome Health Kit that we can test for, and then you can see what state type you have. At the same time, we can test for the gut microbiome and then see if any of the things that are contributing to your vaginal microbiome are coming from your gut. And you can compare those two together. So that's what I've done. I've actually taken the Vaginal Health Kit and then the Gut Microbiome Kit, and I'm testing for those, and then I'm going to go back and look and see what I have found. I'm just so excited about it. I know for some of you may think, oh, I just don't want to know. But I think it's better to know and then make plans to change things that we know we can change to make it a more healthy environment. So what we're going to talk about next week is what are the things that we can do, diet and lifestyle things that we can do to help increase the health of our vaginal microbiome, which is also going to help with the gut microbiome. And of course, anything that we do to improve our gut microbiome is going to help with our vaginal microbiome and our urinary tract microbiome and anything else around in that area that could be affected by the different microbes that we have there. So, yeah, that's pretty much what I have for you today. So if you want to learn what community state type you are, you're going to want to grab the Vaginal Health Kit. And I'll leave the link, and then you can just register for the Vaginal Health Kit, and then I'll send it to you. And then you'll take the test, and then they'll send the results back to me, and then I will give you your own results. So you'll see what community state type you are, see what's dominant for you, and then I can give you recommendations based on that test of things that you can do with diet and lifestyle to help improve the situation. So feel free to click on the link and learn more about the kit and the process of getting the kit and everything. Yeah, that's it for today. Next week we are going to look at now the Vaginal Microbiome Part 3. So it's going to be diet and lifestyle choices for a healthy vaginal microbiome. And so now we're going to start looking at the action steps that we can take and maybe see some of the decisions that we made in the past that would be impacting the health of our vaginal microbiome that we can change now so that we can start to get a lactobacillus dominant vaginal microbiome back in place for those of us who had problems with that area. All right, so call to actions, ladies and gentlemen. You can also still grab your Joint Pain Eliminator Starter Kit. I'm still, of course, working with people with joint pain because many people who have joint pain oftentimes have other issues going on in the vaginal microbiome, and it is a piece of the puzzle. All right. Subscribe to the channel, share this information with a friend, comment on your thoughts. Is this interesting to you? Do you want more of this? Is this boring you to tears? What questions do you have? Because the more questions you have, the more I learn as well. And all this information is hot off the press. So it's the more questions we ask of the people who are actually doing the research and creating the tests, the more answers we're going to get. So do ask any questions that you have or anything that didn't make sense to you. And next week I will answer those questions in the video. And I have people I can contact to answer these questions too, if it's something that I don't know. All right. Thank you so much. I hope this was valuable, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Aloha!